Hello there. My name is Bonnie WK, and I am here because this is a sequence of videos that I have put into a category called Dead People Say the Darndest Things. Now, most people may not understand that, but I happen to enjoy what I do, and I can pick up on people who are on the other side and choose to interact with me. They don't have to. That's not a problem. I'm not overly affected if they don't. And in some cases, I don't choose to have these people come talk to me. They frequently just show up. Some I invite in, some I ask to come in on a regular basis. Some are my friends that we'll be discussing in the series. And some are people that you would know if I mentioned their names. And others are people who would be not somebody that you would be aware of. So I have a book that was published by Lionhearted Publishing, and it was called, at the time, it was called Invited to the Light. And my publisher, who happened to be my best friend, her name is Mary Ann Heathman. She and I were just the closest of friends. And here about 5 years ago or so, she died. And it's something that is just fine with me because I can see her and talk to her anytime I want. But we had discussed this series, Dead People Say the Darndest Things, before she died. And she happens to be one of those people that I will be talking with. But this particular item is, and you probably want to know how it is that I can do this. It's a training process for me. I was not born with this ability. I chose to have it. I sought it out. I wanted to do it, but I wanted to do it in a good way. So if you ever decide to contact or want to learn how to contact the other side, please go to a YouTube account called Light Dreamer Lady, LIGHTDREAMER LADY. And on there is a video called Protect Yourself from Negativity. Please watch that. That is the most important thing that I talk about, that I do. I do it on a continuing basis. I want to make sure that all the contacts that I have with the other side are on a positive level. I've never had a negative contact. I never want to. So this is one of those things you don't want to do, is open yourself up for negativity. Does it exist? Absolutely. In whatever form that it shows up in. So just be aware that it's there and protect yourself. So I chose to do this. I asked Creator if he would help me advance myself in this direction so that I could gain more information but not have to go through trauma to get it. So over a period of years, and I've been doing this to varying degrees for probably 30 years or more, and by my choice, like I said. So for those people that have fear, don't worry about it. Don't even go there. Just be aware that there are people like us. We really do see things, and we really do pick up things. And I've had external sources confirm these things. So not all of them, but many of them. In this particular case, part of this was witnessed by Marianne, as a matter of fact. So she participated. So I wanted you to know who she is before we get into this. Because I have this ability, and I know that people on the other side can pick up that I do have this ability, I have opened myself up in some circumstances to where people on the other side can contact me if they wish. I think it's September of 2007, a man named Steve Fossett his plane crashed and he died. Nobody knew where he was for over a year. And I had followed his career, followed his adventures. He set the record for the highest, or the balloon ride that went around the world during his lifetime. He had established about 115 records in 5 different sports. He was just a go-getter. He really was intent upon doing things that he wanted to do. So then he disappeared. And I followed the search, and no luck, months. And finally they just kind of gave up. And I had occasion to, early that next year, I had occasion to fly from Dallas-Fort Worth Airport to the Reno airport and go out and stay with my friends Kim and Marianne. And on the way there, what I did was I was sitting in the window seat, and I looked out the window, and just very quietly I said aloud, Mr. Steve Fossett, if you are there and if you can hear me, I am someone who can perceive things that go on the other side. If you would like to approach me to see if I can help you in some way find where you are, your body and your plane are, please feel free to do so. That's pretty much about all I said. So I go on to stay with Kim and Marianne, and I'm there, and we were in a place, and we had been there for months, and then we moved to another house. And my room was such that I could have my bedroom, my office, and my living room in the same room. So one day I was sitting and reading on my couch, and I was aware suddenly of something moving back and forth in front of me. It was, at first it was like energy. It was just like air moving, and then it became a little more solid and a little more perceptible to me. And as it grew that way, there was a man walking back and forth in front of me, and he was saying, he was very intense, and he had his head just down a little bit, and he was going, I don't know what's going on. I don't have time for this. I've got things to do. I've got things that I have to do. I don't have time for this. I just don't have time for this. And he just kept repeating all this as he paced back and forth in front of me. And I let him do this for probably 4 or 5 minutes. And then I said, Mr. Fossett. And he turned and he looked at me. And it was kind of like, who are you? And I said, I know that you don't know me. I said, so that shouldn't surprise you. I am somebody that I've got to move this because the light is getting it. I'm somebody that can help you to figure out where you are and what's going on. And so he just stopped and looked at me. And he was not wearing anything particularly outstanding. It was like something that he might fly in. Something that was kind of snug to his body, one color. And he just looked at me. And like he expected me to go on and continue with what I was doing, but not really letting him learn anything. So I told him, I said, first, Mr. Fossett, I said, I know that you know where you are, even though you won't accept it. I said, you had a plane crash somewhere, and you're dead. You're on the other side. I said, I realize that because of the intensity of where you are and what you're talking about, you haven't gone to the other side to the light, but it's okay. We can handle that later. Don't worry about that. So I talked to him about where he was, what was going on, what had happened, anything that I knew. And he just looked at me, and it was like, the more I talked, the more I realized that he knew he was not going to get anything that he was thinking about accomplishing accomplished. My initial impressions were a couple of things. He was letting them go, letting all those things that he hadn't done go. And the way he acted, it was like he had something very important coming up that he was focused on completely. And I believe that this may have been part of the reason why he crashed. I'm not certain of that, but I do feel like from his reaction that he had something in process that he wanted to finish. He just simply wanted to finish it. It was what he was focused on. It felt like each time, each thing that he did, he would focus on it intently until it was done, or until it was time to start something else over here. But he would start that still completely focused on this other thing. So I talked to him, and he gave me some impressions. One, he wanted me to know that it was a surprise. The plane crash was a surprise to him. He wasn't fighting for control of the car. Of the plane. He was simply surprised. It was like one moment he was alive and the next he wasn't. And he was kind of sort of standing there as a spirit watching his plane crash and tumble. And I got the impression that his plane had tumbled, not just hit straight on, but had hit kind of cattywampus and tumbled, and done some major damage. So it was something that he wanted me to know it was a surprise. And I can accept that completely, because he was so intent on, I don't have time for anything. I don't have time for this. I've got something that I've got to do. I've got something that I've got to do. And so he wasn't aware, I think, that he couldn't do it. Whatever it was, he wasn't aware that he couldn't do it. So we talked, and I told him, I said, if you will give me some kind of a visual picture, if you're anywhere near something that I can identify, I'll see if I can get it to the right people. And he showed me, or at least what showed up in my mind, was a big, broad picture of an area that was mountainous away and kind of sort of flat here. But there was nothing to distinguish it from anything else. And I got the impression that his plane was probably on one of those far mountains. Or maybe that was what led to those far mountains. I don't know, but each time I asked him, and I asked him 4 different times if he would show me, he showed me the same view. And I tried everything. At one point I had even tried to sketch an outline of the top of the peaks, because I thought maybe somebody could identify that, but even I couldn't identify it. So there was nothing distinctive about it, just nothing. Like you would think, oh, well, it's near the Ferris wheel. No, it's not. It was in the middle of nowhere. So it was just very difficult for me to get that connection. I talked with him. In the beginning, he was talking with me. Not much. He never did talk a whole lot, but he was gradually becoming comfortable with where he was and what was going on, and then it was going to be time for him to move on. So I allowed him his time and his grief and his setting himself up for, hang on here, him setting himself up. Woo, that's worse. Okay, so we're going to just see if we can, that's just not good. Hang on here just a sec. I'll tell you what I'll do. Okay, that should help. Now, what he did was he got to a point where he just stopped talking. There was nothing else to say. He had shown me where he was. There was nothing else. He wanted his family to know that he was okay on the other side. He particularly wanted Sir Richard Branson to know that it was all okay. Now that he was out of the intensity, realized where he was content. Which is an odd thing to say for him, because he seemed to be a very, very focused man and very much into intensity. Now, this is a man I never met. I'm not even sure I ever heard him speak, maybe, but a few words on television. But he was accepting of it. So, for the most part, he would then stand and look out the south-facing window in the house that I was in. I did not know it for sure, but I suspected that he was facing where his body was. Turns out he was. But he would stand at almost like military parade rest, which is with your hands behind your hips. And he would sometimes stand there for hours and hours. I remember one time I was in the room and I was conscious of him being there for at least 4 hours. But he didn't say anything more. So sometime later, after all that had happened, Marianne and I were standing in the hallway of the house that they lived in, and I had French doors that went into my bedroom. And we were standing at the junction of the wall where my bedroom wall came across and met the office wall, which was at an angle like this. My French doors were over here, and the office wall was here. And it was all open there. Outside there were glass windows, floor to ceiling, and there was across the office, it used to be a living room, across there was a fireplace. And the fireplace had a kind of a brass, I'm thinking shiny area around the actual fireplace itself. So Marianne and I were standing there talking, and I had a very kind of a dark color green, but fairly thin curtain on my window that I could see from where I was standing. And all of a sudden I saw very clearly, I saw a shadow go across that curtain from left to right. And I went, Marianne! I said, there's somebody just walked outside the window. And I knew instantly who it was, because the profile was a man with a kind of a round head, very short hair, and he had on the kind of jacket that had the fur, like a flight jacket. It was shaped. The silhouette was shaped as though he was walking very intently. At virtually a half a second later, Marianne turns towards the fireplace and she goes, "Bonnie, there's somebody on the patio." Now, if you could see the house, nobody could get off that patio without going past these windows, and they hadn't. So she went to the front window. I went to my bedroom window. I looked out my window. There was, of course, nobody there, and I knew there wouldn't be, and you'll know why in a minute. And she looked on the patio, and there was nobody there. I then walked around, went out the patio doors to join her. We looked everywhere. Nobody was anywhere around. And I told her, I said, "I know who it was." And she turned, and I had already told her about Steve coming and visiting me, and she says, "Was it him?" And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "He wants us to know something." She says, "What could it be?" And I said, "I don't know, but Marianne, you know, my window is on the second floor, and there is a grill, like a railing to the left of my patio window. Of my window looking out that way, and it was down one floor. So he had to walk through the grate and past my window, which is physically impossible, but I knew it was him, and I knew he wanted both of us to see him. And she saw him clearly. She just had never seen Steve Fossett before. She didn't know what he looked like. So it was very interesting. We actually got a kick out of that. So, we have the light. Cool. I wonder how that can work. Interesting. Let's turn it this way. No, it's still doing the same light thing. Hang on just a minute. Okay, I have completely darkened that window. The next thing that happened after that was Marianne died in April of that next year, or that same year. And she died on a Tuesday, and we were going to have a celebration of her life on the weekend at the house. And she was hanging around. So I'll tell you more about that in a different episode. But there for a while I couldn't find her. I couldn't figure out where she was. So I was looking all around the house. But it wasn't until I went out on the patio and looked across the street. There were like the tops of hills. And there was like a saddleback where you have an area over there. And I saw them. I saw Marianne and Steve Fossett. And they totally ignored me, but they talked. They were together on that hill for 3 days. Marianne had the advantage of having me around her for 10 years. She knew a whole lot. I think she was talking to him about it. He talked to her. He wouldn't talk to me. He still has not talked to me again. Now, we proceed further. So Marianne died. After she was gone, I drove back from Reno to Dallas, and I went about my business and went and got a job, and I was working in a company, and I was doing accounting work for them, and on this particular day, they were having people from all over the country were coming in to be at this organization because they were one of the biggest in the world at what they did. So I was, normally speaking, I had a cubicle that was kind of up towards the walkway where everybody went, and on the left side. But on this particular day, I happened to go back to the back, and the person who was in the back right cubicle was not there. So I was using their computer. There was something wrong with mine. And I became aware at some point of a man standing behind me and watching me. And I figured this is nothing new, because maybe he just wants to see what we do in here. So I didn't have a problem with that. But he didn't move, and he didn't leave, and he didn't ask any questions. And so finally, after, I'd kind of sort of out of the corner of my eye, I'd pick him up over here, and he's back behind me probably about 4 or 5 feet. And so finally, I finished doing what I was doing, and I turned around to ask him if there was anything I could do to help him with. And it was Steve Fossett. And he was standing in front of me, just at the bare edge of the cubicle, and he had his hands out. He had a big grin on his face, and I'm holding this so you can see both hands, but his hands were actually further apart. It was more like they were about like this, about that far apart, and it appeared to be something like clear plastic, like a clear plastic sleeve of some kind. But he wouldn't tip it towards me, and I couldn't see what was in it. I could see there was something in it because it was like ripply type thing. But he never moved that, but he had a grin on his face. And it was a closed mouth grin. And I thought, oh my God, there has to be some development. So I turned around and went on my computer and did a search for Steve Fossett. The only thing I could find was news about when he died, and when they quit, they declared him dead, and then they quit looking, and then they started looking again. And all that, but there was nothing current, not one thing. And this was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I think. And so I thought, and I turned around to say, I'm sorry, I didn't see anything, and he was gone, which didn't really surprise me. So I thought, well, okay, my imagination then, not a problem. So I went home that night, and before I went to bed, I checked again. I didn't even check, really. I just was checking the news service that I used, and son of a gun, somebody had found his identification and some other stuff. And then they showed how they had packaged his things, and it was in a clear plastic sleeve. And I was like, oh God, and I'm sorry, this touches me. And so I thought, oh, thank you, God, somebody found him. Oh, I did forget to tell you that at one point I told him, I said, I can't see where you are. I said, if you want to be found, you're going to have somebody else do it. And sure enough, somebody else did. And they found his identification and some money first. They put it in a clear plastic sleeve, and they showed it on the news. And I was so excited. I was just thrilled for him. And this is what I'm talking to you about now is not something I have generally talked about to most people. And I certainly had not talked about it to the people I was working with. So I went in the next day, and I got there kind of a little bit early, and everybody else was there early too. And so I told the people in my immediate area, there was like 4 of them, and I told them what had happened the previous day. And I said, I want you to know that this happened. I said, I don't know what's going to happen, but he was here. This is what he was holding. He was smiling. And and about that time, one of them interrupts me, and they said, I thought something strange was going on with you yesterday. And I said, why? They said, because you kept looking at nothing. And I was like, okay, yeah. So I told them this, and about, I'm going to say 4 or 5 hours later, I don't remember the point of time, but I do remember the event. He showed up again, standing almost in the same place. And he had the biggest grin on his face. He was so happy. It was incredible. He couldn't have smiled bigger if you'd have put prongs in his cheeks and propped his mouth open. Huge, massive grin. And I told him, you're okay now. You know what to do. I had already told him about going to the light and that everything was okay. If he chose to come back and talk to me, that's fine. If he chose not to, that's fine. But he was okay. And he left, and I haven't seen him since. I think it would be grand if anybody that knows Richard Branson or, well, probably his family, I don't know if they would be interested in this aspect of it, but Richard Branson might be interested. He's at peace. He's very happy. He's like, he hangs around Richard. He particularly likes to be with him on the flights that he takes. Just the regular private plane flights. He likes sitting in the airplane. He likes traveling with his friend. Sometimes when Richard is working on something, I believe that Richard will pick up something is around him or something moved. That's him. Not always, but frequently. And I will tell you this so that you can understand. When someone you know is on the other side and you wish to speak to them, all you have to do is to call them by their real name the first time. If it's your father, use his real name. Don't say Daddy. Say his name. Ask him to come sit in front of you or come talk with you. They'll do it because they want to. They understand everything when they get to the other side. And they're excited. They want you to feel good. They want you to feel at peace. They are not unhappy. There's certainly no pain. They are still the same energy body, spiritual body that was your friend or your enemy. If you were hurt by them, if you feel pain because of their loss to you, then yell and scream at them. They don't mind because they don't have any emotional baggage with you, with this lifetime. It's already taken care of. And I hope that you will stick around and watch some of the other videos because I've encountered some very interesting people and learned some very interesting information about being on the other side and how it felt for them to get there. Different parameters that I have found discusses. So thank you very much for being with me and for listening. And I hope that you understand that there is justice in the world, truly. I have a great relationship with Father. I will not jeopardize it for anything. Everything is okay. I love you, and I wish you love and light and peace and joy. Thank you very much. Bye. Oh, by the way, if you'd like more information, go to secretsfromthelight.com or myjourneytotheotherside.com. Have a great day.